not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
Okay, Judd's got to get out to Vikings practice here in like 22 minutes. So we're going to give you a 22-minute condensed but packed observations from last night's game. What a fun atmosphere. And I know people are like, Positive Phil went out on Twitter last night like, boy, this and that, unfortunate, but what a rivalry, what a game. And people are like, bleep you, Positive Phil, it's not a rivalry. It's a hammer and a nail. Okay, it's fun to have a vibe like that at Target Center though, with the Mavs coming in.
It was fantastic. It was great. I mean, my God, people are this is. I told you about this after the Lakers loss, and we saw it again last night. Welcome to the world of every game being important because fans care. That's what this is.
TNT.
Yep.
Luka.
And the fans
back
are into
to back.
But I mean, you can't. So here's the conundrum. Because I thought Target Center last night was fantastic. I mean, it was alive. And the Wolves lost the game, and it was alive. But you can't have that and then have rational. Like, you got to pick, right? It's either you get that, which is great, but then every game matters, or you get rational, which is a quieter crowd, perhaps more apathetic. But so like I will say this. For as much as people now are it's like, folks, it's game 5. I don't care if it's game 5. This is the most important game. It's the Mavericks. They lost to the Mavericks. Okay. I'd rather have that, though, than, ho hum, they lost. So I'll take this. It was great.
And we're going to get into a bunch of stuff. There's definitely things to nitpick. There's definitely some really positive signs. I do want to shout out Nicolay Law real quick, the exclusive personal injury law firm of Flagrant Howls and Score North podcasts. Nicolay Law knows that when you or a loved one gets injured, ordinary life can come to a stop. Things can get complicated. And that's where Russell Nicolay and his team, rooted in the Twin Cities, come on in here to help you get the compensation you deserve after an accident. So if you've been injured, get Minnesota's local award-winning injury lawyers. Get Nicolay. Start your path to winning at nicolaylaw.com or give them a call at 1-855-NICOLAY. So if you would allow Positive Phil a moment here, okay? A lot of things that were annoying last night. But at the end of the day, you had the ball down by, I think it was 4 with like 20 seconds to go. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. Anthony Edwards winds up getting stripped, and Mavericks come back, hit a couple of free throws, and ice the game. But it was back and forth. It was right there for the taking. On a night where you turn the ball over on 20% of your offensive possessions. Yeah. And they do have some turnover stuff to clear up. So that's not something that just goes away with the snap of the fingers. They're building chemistry. Naz Reid had 5 turnovers in 26 minutes. Ant had some bad turnovers in the game. So it is a thing that it's a fire that needs to be actively put out. But you turned the ball over 20 times, like a 20% turnover rate in that game. Anthony Edwards had a lid on the free throw, on the rim during his free throws. He was 6 of 12 from the free throw line, which is not something that's going to happen on a regular basis. And I know they do this all the time. Like Kyrie and Luka, the shot making and the playmaking, and they're going to do it. Like, they're 2 of the best offensive players in the NBA the last 20 years. But you had all those forces where those guys are just daggering you. Now, Luka actually had an offensive night in terms of efficiency. Yeah. And I'd be curious to see, because the Wolves had Nikhil on him for parts of the night. It was interesting the way they were playing him, but Kyrie was on his A game. I just think this is going to be the seeds are being planted for Wolves and Mavericks to be a thing in the Western Conference for the next 2 or 3 years, as long as Kyrie and Luka are the main pairing on that team. Mm-hmm. And I know it's kind of a devastating way to lose when you take a big lead early and Ant has 24 points right away in the first quarter. But I actually came away thinking, boy, the Wolves just put this team together like 2.5 weeks ago. And here they are going toe-to-toe with a fully formed, awesome Mavericks team. I take away more positives than negatives, even though 20 turnovers is unacceptable. Missed free throws, some like the rebounding key spots where it's like, grab a rebound for God's sakes.
And self-inflicted wounds of the turnovers, missed free throws is like that's the difference maker in that game. Like Luka and Kyrie are insane. Like the shot that Luka made with a minute to go from like almost from half court with a guy in his face, and that ball easily goes in. That wasn't just a ricochet weird shot. That was a dime.
His only make of the night from 3 too, by the way, of course.
And he did that all Western Conference Finals. Like Luka like owns Target Center at this point. Like it is insane what that dude can do. However, the Timberwolves, not the Twins, the Timberwolves literally shot themselves in the foot with the turnovers and the missed free throws. And there's still things like, and I'll ask you guys a question here a little bit on Donte, but there are still too many positives, even with the 2 losses this season. It was still an unreal game. And that's, for Minnesota sports fans, that's really all I care about from that side. It was an amazing game.
I think the important thing, too, to keep in mind, and last night is a prime example. The Mavericks had beat, they had played the night before the Jazz. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was a back-to-back.
So it was a back-to-back, okay. But Luka and Kyrie both played. Luka actually, well, of course, I thought he was basically dying because he appeared to hurt his knee towards the end of the first half, was helped off, and then I'm like, okay, he's probably done. He's, of course, comes back. But what we saw last night, and this is going to be fun, what we saw last night is the Timberwolves are going to get teams' best shots. Like, I think there's a fighting chance that Kyrie or Luka is a DNP last night, back-to-back game. You're traveling, right? But not now. It's Ant. It's a team that you played in the Western Conference Finals. Like, you are going to have to be prepared, and I think that they will be, to get the best shot from teams. Like, teams look at you now as a credible threat. That's a TNT game last night. Like, there's a whole new aura now that from the playoff run that is going to be on this franchise. That means there's not going to be a ton of games where your opponent does not care.
The league is really sensitive to, like, the Joel Embiid thing is kind of boiling over with.
Yeah, and I think the TNT
Sixers
thing
fans and
impacts that, right? Like, I think you're more open to being fined or getting in trouble if you sit a star player for a TNT game.
And that's the thing. I mean, I think the league is trying to put pressure on teams and looking to fine teams if there's not an actual injury on a back-to-back or a nationally televised game. But Luka had every reason. He tweaked. It was like he got like a cramp or a Charlie horse or something. He tweaked his leg toward the end of the first half. He had every reason to, all right, it's a back-to-back. This game, like we like to send a message to the Wolves on TNT, but it's not worth risking. And he came back in the second half.
I know.
And he was the degree to which Wolves fans and Luka egg each other on and get under each other's skin. I mean, he gets under our skin by just hitting dagger, ridiculous shots and always making the right play. And it's infuriating to watch if you're an opposing team's fan base. But then he gets into it at multiple different times last night where he's yelling stuff at the front row. He's looking for basically a fight with not like an actual fight, but he hit that 3 and he turned toward the courtside seats baseline, or not baseline, but like along the sideline.
Yep.
And the words coming out of his mouth, man.
I think it was that's what I effing do. I think someone found us. That's what I effing do, and screamed it right at the fans.
Yeah. But early in here's what it felt like to me, Judd, and we were kind of texting about this, and Dex too. The first quarter felt to me like Anthony Edwards was on a mission on national TV in front of Luka and Kyrie to show everybody I am the best player on a floor with the aforementioned players. I am becoming the best player in the world, and I want to show it right now. 24 points in the first quarter. I think he spent the entire summer with the Olympic experience was great, but I think he spent the entire summer seething about the way the Western Conference Finals went. They were in all of those games, the first 3 where they fell down 3-0. They were in all of those games. I don't think Ant was 100%. I think when he fell on his hip in Game 6 against Denver, he was not the same player in Game 7 or in the Mavericks series. Mm-hmm. So he's healthy. He spent the summer adding to his game, getting in better shape, working out with LeBron and KD and Steph Curry. And the first quarter felt personal last night for Anthony Edwards. But then reality kind of hit in like the second and third quarter, and he came back and definitely helped bring the Wolves back into that game in the fourth quarter. But he rose up and then kind of realized, okay, yeah, there still is another level here that Luka and Kyrie can get to, that Ant gets to sometimes, and the Wolves as a team can get to sometimes,
right?
But not as consistently as those guys and the Mavs as a team.
And Kyrie for sure decides on certain nights that he's going to get there. So but that's a decision. But yeah, that first, in fact, I texted you. I said in the first quarter, we are seeing Olympic Ant. Like, this is the Olympian who has been watched all these guys. He's like, yeah, this is what you do. And yeah, they didn't sustain it. The free throw thing with Ant especially was weird. I remain very hard pressed though to look at these first 5 games and say, oh boy, I'm seeing things now. I mean, guys are still adjusting. It's not perfect. There is a conversation too, I think, especially when it comes to the rebounding. There's a conversation to be had about roles changing because Cat's gone. Again, I'll go back to this for the Knicks and Wolves. That trade was incredibly late. That trade was incredibly late. And you don't just lose Cat and say, okay, Julius Randle, you do the Cat thing, right? DiVincenzo and Randle are really good additions, but they're different players completely. Mm-hmm. So this is going to take probably, and I'm not saying you're going to be bad, okay? So I'm not trying to make excuses, but this is probably going to take 20 games of adjustments or adjustment. And so I think that becomes incredibly important. And it's not that they don't want to. It's not like Ant is freezing no one out. As far as I can tell, he's very good about adapting. But there are things that you see. I think last night in the rebounding area, especially, Cat being gone, you sort of had guys just not pick up the pieces yet. That will change.
Yeah, they're definitely, and again, it's been 4 games or whatever, but they're definitely size-wise. Now Julius Randle can rebound, but Cat has 3 inches of size, maybe 4 inches of height on Julius Randle. And so there's just they're at one point, actually, one of their best lineup sparks was when they put Julius Randle at the 5 with 8 minutes to go in the game.
You're right.
And they were down 99-88 at the time. Credit to our guy Jack Borman for just putting together this summary on Twitter here. So they decide, hey, Rudy is off, and we're gonna go small ball basically with Julius Randle as a stretch 5. And the offensive possessions right after they made that decision, down by 11, were Nickeil Alexander-Walker 3, Jaden McDaniels 3, another Nickeil Alexander-Walker 3, Edwards layup, Nickeil floater, and then a Jaden McDaniels layup. 6 straight possessions, 6 straight baskets, 3 of them were threes, and the Wolves cut the lead from 11 down to 3. Now, rebounding became, when the smaller you go, especially against Likely and Gafford, those guys, and Luka can rebound. And Judd, you and I were in the locker room after the game, and one of the biggest, turnovers were a question, but turnovers are kind of, you can just kind of fix those by being less careless and just chemistry and everything.
Yeah.
Rebounding, some of it's just are you tall enough? Or can you, are you big enough to box guys out? And they are definitely not as big, taking Cat off the team and putting Julius Randle on the team. But I would say both Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards in the locker room were yeah, we got to solve this. But it was kind of a quiet confidence that they're gonna solve the problem.
Yeah, Ant was for sure.
So anyways, yeah, and there's a whole Julius Randle conversation to be had here too. I know Declan has a DiVincenzo question. On the rivalry thing, I want to ask you guys this. Is this a budding rivalry, do you think, between the Wolves and the Mavs? Because the pushback I got was, well, it can't be a rivalry when one team smokes the other team in a playoff series. And I would fight back with 2 things. Number one, the last 10 times these 2 teams have played, they are 5-5 against each other when you include regular season and postseason. The postseason games were all nail-biters until the last game. The Wolves had the lead late in the fourth quarter of the first 3 games, if I recall, and then the Mavs came back and nipped them at the end. So you've got back and forth close games. They both played each other in the Western Conference Finals, so you have the playoff aspect of the rivalry. Multiple high-end, household name superstar players, some bad blood and chippiness where like the players are getting into it with each other, the fans and the players
Luka
are
and the
clapping back and
fans.
forth.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
It's awesome.
Like even Lively going at Gobert on a podcast last summer. I mean, I know the Wolves have to hold up their end of the bargain and beat the Mavericks and maybe even up the fight in a playoff series, but I think this is one of the budding rivalries in the league right now.
Yeah, I think it's great. And it's great for, I think, Minnesota, too, to like get a new rivalry just in all of sports. Obviously, like the Vikings, we have them with the Packers, and the Lions have obviously come up now. Same with the Bears. Like your NFC North teams are always going to be there. But like the Twins and Yankees, like I feel like that story's getting stale because like fans just know the Yankees will always win. And the Wild have like honestly no legit rival. Like the Blues, maybe people don't like the Avs. I think Minnesota. Yeah, like
it's got to be playoffs. Yeah.
And what we saw, and you see the tenacity from Luka, who's literally yelling at a sold out crowd, saying "That's what I bleeping do," is incredible stuff. Like I love that. Yeah, would it piss me off if I was in the crowd? Of course, it pisses you off, but it's also fun. That's part of the rivalry. That's sports. So I think this is developing into like one hell of a rivalry. I'm super excited for it.
I think the key word is budding. So if they play again in the playoffs this year and the Wolves lose, then it's like, okay, it's fun. I don't like them, but they sort of are laughing now. But they played once. The definite in-season intensity, like it's still October last night. Like ordinarily, you do not get an October game in the NBA or hockey that feels like that. So I think budding is the key word. But yes, it feels like, I mean, the problem is the Wolves were bad for so long at such a laughing stock or just one and done in the playoffs. You're not going to have a team. No one respects you. That's my point. Is like last night, the Mavs wanted to win. The Mavs like back to back. This is the NBA. A lot of times in a back to back, you don't care. The Mavs wanted to win. This is headed in the right direction. I do think, though, that for it to get really, really intense, I would love to see them play in the playoffs again this season, and I would love to see the Wolves win, because that's where I think you take it from a rival to pure hatred. I love hatred.
Yeah, I think it feels like there's some hate between these two teams. There's definitely some chippiness.
I can feel it brewing.
I think the Mavericks have surpassed the Nuggets, at least right now, as the Wolves' chief rival. Because when you beat the Nuggets in 7, you kind of conquered them a little bit, and then the Nuggets have gotten a little worse, and their roster has kind of eroded.
It's Luka, right? Though, I feel especially in this league, like the Joker, unbelievable player, very hard to hate the Joker.
He's more bland. He's more bland, I guess.
Yeah, he's more bland.
Luka's antagonistic.
Yes, Luka wants to duel with the fans. I love that. So I feel like the Mavericks. I feel like their roster has much more intensity, and you know that Ant will then go to Dallas and do the same thing. Like I think that's where you cross the threshold of, okay, now you hate that team, and that's a rare blessing to have. I love that.
Couple more quick things before we send Judd off to Vikings practice, and then tomorrow Kyle Teige joining Flagrant Howls. So we have a loaded week this week. KS Drywall is providing full drywall, plaster repair, popcorn ceiling texture removal, and interior painting services for you Wolves fans out there, or anyone who just happens to be listening to a Wolves podcast needing painting services or drywall, or whatever.
I mean, Mavs fans, right?
Could be. Yeah. Now they serve the Twin Cities greater metro area and western Wisconsin. So you'd have to come up to this area if you are a hate-listening Mavs fan. But KS Drywall is able to handle anything from new construction to small emergency repairs. No job is too big or too small. So head over to ksdrywall.com to schedule a free estimate. That's ksdrywall.com. Dex, what is your Donte DiVincenzo question?
So through 4 games, Donte is about a +1 from a plus-minus standpoint. He's had 2 positive games, 2 negative games, again, just from the plus-minus side. He's also still like getting teammates involved, which is what I've noticed. Like he had 6 assists last night, which was great, but the shots really haven't started to fall for him. So through 4 games, shooting just 31% from the floor, taking 7.5 threes, averaging just 26% conversion rate. So like a super low rate. Is this more of a law of averages, eventually you think these like even out. I mean, he's going to be chucking threes, and he's historically a very good shooter. But even though it's early, is there any intrigue or concern with what Donte's been able to do from a shooting perspective, not just from an offensive flow perspective?
Not for me, Judd. I think, at some point he's going to start knocking down 40% of his attempts. You are seeing, and he's also trying to fit in and, as a ball handler, what is his role and what lineup combinations work the best. And Finch is trying to work through some of that. But you are seeing just in the first 4 games, there are some combinations that are working better for DiVincenzo than others. When he's on the court with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, that's one of the Wolves' best lineup pairings. So of all the 2-man combinations so far for the Wolves that have played at least 45 or 50 minutes together, the best pairing per 100 possessions is Nickeil and Anthony Edwards. But the third best pairing is Nickeil and Donte DiVincenzo. So those guys have a little something together when they're out on the court. They can both space. They're both very active off the ball too, and are very switchy. So I would just we have to keep an eye out for what are the best combos for DiVincenzo? Who does he work the best with on the court? Nickeil and Anthony Edwards, and even there's some Naz Reid positive noise in here too, and that the Wolves. How about this? The second best trio combination for the Wolves so far is Nickeil, Ant, and DiVincenzo. The fourth best trio combination is Nickeil, DiVincenzo, Naz Reid. So DiVincenzo with Naz Reid, DiVincenzo with Nickeil. There's some positive signs there, but he's going to knock down shots at some point. I don't personally have any worry about that.
I think it's going to take 20 games. I think come back to me with that question after 30 games. And if things aren't going well, I might be a bit concerned, but I think this is just going to take time. Combinations, comfort, guys just got here. And look, it's important that it is Ant's team. And these guys, I think, are trying to respect and fit around Ant, which is what Ant did with Cat. I much prefer this. I much prefer Anthony Edwards being the central guy and knowing that, and guys trying to adapt, which I think that they will do. But yeah, DiVincenzo didn't forget how to shoot threes. It's a situation where, he honestly, I thought last night, does not look completely comfortable yet, which is not surprising 4 games in.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not concerned. Not concerned at all. I think this is a really good team that's going to have to find its way a little bit. Because again, I like the trade, but go back to when that was made. That is a really late trade, and you're going to see the same thing with Carl with the Knicks. You don't it's not a fantasy league trade, right? Hey, I got this guy on my team, and he's scoring all these points. You actually have to fit him in.
Yeah, and then one last thought on Julius Randle. I keep, through every game, I feel like I keep forming my Julius Randle takes and opinion. You obviously give up size compared to Cat. He is shooting really well, but I think long-term, Cat is going to be the better shooter. But he is very clearly more athletic than Cat, was more of a quicker twitch athlete than Cat.
Yep.
He's a better ball handler in traffic. He did have a couple where he kicked it away last night, but in general, he's got a handle and feels very comfortable going one end to the other and making a play. He's much more likely to pass out of a drive. It's to use a drive to the hoop to get someone else an open look. Cat had one of the highest turnover rates and lowest pass percentages on drives the last couple of years with the Wolves. But there are times for Julius Randle where it's dude, okay, he's trying to bull his way into 2 or 3 defenders.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes.
Too aggressively.
Yes.
And sometimes just calm down on that. But every game we're gonna probably just unlock more and more thoughts on how he fits in with this team.
He is much more comfortable in his body, i.e. coordinated. I think that's the difference. Carl, it was always, Carl didn't get foul calls on drives because he was because he would he would lope in, and the officials were like, dude, it looked like you caused the contact.
Which he did more than any player in the NBA.
But literally he would come in Julius, you could see he knows exactly what he's doing. And yeah, he's not as good of athlete or player, or I should say player, but the fact is like you still see enough where you're like, okay, I get this. I do think this is right now going to be a better playoff team. Like,
boy, I love that take on October 30th. Let's
seeing
go,
the pieces,
Judd.
I think the pieces make more sense. I think the pieces make more sense.
I mean, they did. A large part of the reason why they beat the Nuggets was Cat and his size and
his defense.
The Suns too.
But you didn't get past Dallas. And as Tim Conley thought, you know what? Western Conference Finals, these fans might be excited, but I'm not. I want an LOB. And
Dallas seems to be more of a problem on paper than Denver. So,
love it.
All right, there's your Flagrant Howls here. We'll hit you with another episode tomorrow. The Wolves play the Nuggets and get the Westbrook experience at home here. Was it Friday night, right?
That's like an 8:30 tip this time.
Is that
around.
ESPN?
Yeah,
it's another nationally televised game.
That's
right?
the thing is they are a national darling now. Well, they should be.
Yeah. So, all right. Thanks for hanging out with us on your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.